Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of Marvel Studios' brand new superhero film, Deadpool and Wolverine. Let me start off by saying spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. So if you have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine, pause this episode, tuck it to the side, go watch it, come back, and we're going to enjoy all of this movie goodness as if we were sitting in the theater together. And so, yes, it will be spoilers. This is a spoiler review because there's no other way to review this film without talking spoilers. Absolutely no way. I sat there after the end when the credits were rolling. Like, how am I going to review this movie without spilling the beans on something, because there's so much to be discussed, if you will. And I'm not going to go scene by scene, break down every little scene, every little cameo, every little thing that was set up. I'm not going to do all that, but it's just certain things that happen in the movie that I just have to talk about it with somebody. And you drew the lucky straw, and we're going to discuss them. So, spoiler alert, we will be talking spoilers here on the concession stand when in regards to Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine is, as I stated before, a superhero film based off of Marvel Comics characters of the same name. It's produced by Marvel Studios. It's distributed by Disney, of course. And this is the 34th, you heard me right, 34th film in the MCU, also known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's the sequel to the 2016 Deadpool and 2018's Deadpool 2. And so the film is directed by Sean Levy. Sean Levy, who has directed some pretty good films and brought us some really good TV shows as well. But he directed Night in the Museum. He directed Free Guy. He also directed Real Steel and the Atom Project. And he also produced or is one of the producers of Stranger Things over on Netflix that everybody loves, including myself. He is a really good director, and a director who I was a little curious about when it came to directing Deadpool and Wolverine, because as I listed his filmography, you notice that there's a lot of family-friendly films in there. And we know Deadpool is a R-rated franchise, a hard R, might I add, as far as rated franchise. Speaking of R-rated franchise, this is the first R-rated film in the MCU, and they went all in. They did not cheapen the R rating here. It is not, it's nothing skirting the line here that it was PG-13 with a little hot sauce on it. No, it is full on R. We get that. We know that in the first 5 minutes of this film. Sean Levy has directed the two stars of this film, who are Ryan Reynolds returning as Deadpool just recently in the Atom Project at Netflix. He also directed Ryan Reynolds in Free Guy, which I enjoyed as well. He directed the great Hugh Jackman returning to pop the claws one last time as Wolverine. He directed him in Real Steel, which was a surprisingly good film. I wasn't expecting that to be good, but it was good. I enjoyed Real Steel. Well, they already have a relationship. They came together to make this film that is, this was really a Hail Mary when it comes to Marvel. They needed a win, and they needed a win bad. Marvel has been reeling ever since Avengers Endgame, and what that was, 2019, is 5 years. Marvel has not really put out just, that film that is reassuring that Marvel will carry on after the Avengers film, after the first three phases of this cinematic universe. And aside from maybe one or two films since then, I'm looking at you, Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm looking at you, Guardians 3. Uh, Other than that, it's been a struggle. Shang-Chi was good, but the rest of the films have been, whoo, boy, um, it hasn't been all that good. They haven't been horrible. They haven't been bad. They just haven't been great. And Marvel needed this, along with their Disney Plus shows. They've been struggling. So who comes to save the day? No, not Tony Stark. No, not not Steve Rogers, but Deadpool. This film absolutely was the best Marvel film since Endgame. It's not even close. It's, it's not even close. I'm not saying it's better than Endgame, but it's up there with Endgame as far as quality, as far as comic book accuracy, and keeping to the lore of these characters, keeping the spirit of these characters that we as geeks who followed these characters in comic books and animated shows and so on and so forth, even in the Fox films, you grown to love these characters, and they kept that, even added to it, which I thought was impossible to do, but they added to it, but still kept the flavor that we know and love of these characters. It's like this. It's the only way I can think of. The MCU, you went to the club, right? You ever did this? You went to the club and you there with your whoever you went with, and they just wander off, go dancing and drinking with somebody else that they met, and you left standing in the corner. And all of a sudden somebody comes along and buys you a drink or offers a dance or something. And saves the night for you because it turned into a bad night. That's what the MCU did to us after Endgame. We went to the club with Endgame. We were jigging. We were we were twerking on the floor, all this other good stuff. And they just left. And they left. And we were just standing in the corner. They put baby in the corner. And you had a couple of guys or girls come up to you, ask for a dance. You had your Thor Love and Thunders come up to you. You had your Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness walk up to you. The Marvels walked up to you, but you didn't want that. That's not what you wanted. And then the doors opened up and Deadpool and Wolverine walked in and just took you by the hand and escorted you to the dance floor. That's what it felt like. It felt like the knight in shining armor for this cinematic universe. This movie was excellent, man. I have been trying to come down from the high of this film for the past 3 hours since I watched it. Because I wanted to give an honest review and not just be biased as far as, okay, yeah, when you walk out of a film and you like, oh man, that was awesome, and then a couple hours go by and you forget half the movie and you're like, well, it really wasn't that good. But not this time. This movie got better every time I thought about it. Every time I thought about what was going on, the story and the chemistry between Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. And of course, all of the cameos, which we're going to go over. Of course, once again, spoilers. And so this movie just worked. Everything worked. I did have a couple of gripes, but we'll get to it with the gripe portion of this review. Let's start off with the cast. Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson, also known as Deadpool. He's Deadpool. he is this character. There's no way he could fumble this. This is who he is. This is precisely who he is, and I enjoyed him in this film. I enjoyed him. He was more humanized in this film than he was in the previous two Deadpool films. Even though he was great in those, as the character because he is that character. He literally is. The character of Deadpool in the comics was based on Ryan Reynolds. So it's virtually impossible for him to mess it up. And he didn't do it here. The return of Hugh Jackman as Logan, also known as Wolverine. Man, I was worried. I'm not going to lie. I was worried about this because we got such a perfect send off of this character in Logan. I mean, perfect send off. And we're going to bring him back as some cheap little cash grab, I guess you can say. I'm not feeling it. I really, even though it was exciting, when the stills came out online, they released a picture of him in the yellow spandex and all that. You were like, okay, never mind. But it was still kind of, man, he's getting older now. He's, you know, what is this? How is this going to work in the story? As soon as he popped up on screen, all that went away. Hugh Jackman was literally born to be Wolverine, even though he's a foot taller than what Wolverine is in the comic book. Or is he? Because the first spoiler of the review, they actually shrunk him down in one of the variants. They shrunk him down to 5'3", and I don't agree with that 5'3" the way it's depicted on the screen because he actually looked 3'5". Maybe I'm just looking at it that way because I'm only 5'6", and so I'm like, no, it's no way he was that short. But they had him so short, and it was comic book accurate, and it was hilarious. It was hilarious, but it reinforced the fact why they changed certain things from the comics to the big screen. You can't have it that way. There's no way he could be that small in these films. He'll be a joke just like he was in this movie. It would be a joke. But I still would prefer a shorter actor if you want to go accuracy wise, because that's part of his character, but Hugh Jackman finds a way after all these years, after 25 years, to perfect this character without that flaw, I guess you could say. But awesome. Awesome. He also played other variants of Wolverine. When we went through this montage, we saw Patch from the comics. We saw the wild, grungy Wolverine from the comics, the brown and orange suit from the comics who took on the Hulk, when the Hulk ripped him in half in the comic book. And all of these variants, beautifully done. That montage was like a nerd's wet dream, and it was mine. I was sitting there like a little schoolgirl, just I was all into it. It was beautiful to watch this stuff on the big screen. But Hugh Jackman jumped right back into that role, and this was a different Wolverine. This isn't the Wolverine that we saw in X-Men and X-Men Origins, thank God. But we, in all the other X-Men films, this was a different version of this character, a different variant of this character, and a different attitude. And it was more comic accurate. And I couldn't believe that he did it, How many different variations of this character can he do? We've seen it. It was what, 13 X-Men films over the past, even though Wolverine doesn't appear in all of them, but in the, I'm gonna say 10 films, I think there's a few different kind of emotional journeys that he goes on, but he actually switched it up here, but kept the core that we know and love from all of those films. The dude is amazing portrayal in this film. Swinging back to Sean Levy as a director, his direction in this film, I don't understand. I'm talking to myself now. I don't understand why I was doubting Sean Levy, because I love Sean Levy's films. I do. I just never pictured him in this type of, making this type of film. But he did it. He did it, and he pulled it off perfectly. The tone was great. The pacing was great. Everything worked. Everything clicked. And one of Sean Levy's greatest strengths as a director is his character, the way he flush out characters within his film. Even if the films aren't top tier, he does take the time to flush out the character. The characters that we follow go through a journey, and there's no difference here. Wade Wilson is going through a journey here, sort of a midlife crisis, if you will, and it was a nice journey. Now, it was a couple of things that I questioned in that journey, but like I said, we'll get to that in a few. Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, goes on a journey. Our villain, Cassandra Nova, goes through a journey. The other antagonist, not the villain, but the antagonist, Mr. Paradox, goes on a journey. And it comes to a resolution at the end. Some good, some bad. But they all have a beginning and an end. Some feel a little rushed, but you only have so much time. But at the end of the day, nicely done. The fight sequences, the action sequences, awesome. I enjoyed the battles between Wolverine and Deadpool. It wasn't a buddy cop film. This wasn't a kumbaya movie. They get together on a team up to take down the foe and sing kumbaya around a campfire. No, it wasn't none of that. These two characters went at it the entire movie. And when we get that friendship at the end, it is truly earned. And I appreciate it so much because it gets tiresome to see the same rigmarole every movie. Two heroes get together, they're buddies, they fight the villain and come out victorious at the end. They never have a disagreement or anything. And it's it's so unrealistic, it just doesn't work. I loved how it was so realistic how these two got together. Deadpool ripped this variant of Wolverine out of his timeline, and without accident, without anything, selfishly to save Deadpool's timeline, and basically conned him into helping him by telling him, "Oh, you saved my world, I could save your world," and knowing good and well he couldn't save his world, but selfishly he wanted his help. And it wasn't a end of the movie reveal. This was when Wolverine found out about it or figured it out. It was in Act 2. So we get to the point where they were getting to this friendship, and then that happened, and it exploded, and then they had to work back to get where they were. This movie literally took the time to do this, and to show this struggle, to show this mental journey that these characters were on, to put down selfishness, to put down regret, to put down grief, to put down all this for the greater good, and work together, which they eventually did at the end. Awesome job. Fight scenes, action sequences, all that aside, that was an awesome job. But I was talking about the action sequences. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it. Some of it was a little choppy. The battle at the start of the third act of this film, at the camera work, I didn't really like. It was a lot going on, and it was a lot of cuts going on. Editing wise, that kind of was like, man, I wanted to focus on this fight, but by the time you're trying to focus on that fight, they switch to another fight and switch to another fight. It's like, oh, wait, what's going on? It was just a lot going on. But speaking of that, here's the heavy spoiler section of this show, of this review, if you will. Let's get to that fight and let's get to who all was involved in this fight. This is where the cameos came in, and this is the part I wanted to talk about the most because a lot of the cameos in here I knew was going to happen. But it was the joy feeling of seeing cameos that I did not see coming at all. I kind of speculated by certain things that I was seeing online, but I was so blocked off with trying to stay spoiler free for the past 2 weeks. I didn't look at nothing much, but a couple of things did kind of sneak through that caught my interest. I was like, does this have something to do with Deadpool? It was just something weird like that. Number one, the first big cameo in this film was Wolverine. And you may ask, who is Wolverine? That's not a real character. That's not a character in the comics or nothing. But it's a Wolverine variant who is actually Henry Cavill. Yes, Superman himself. Or at least from the DCEU, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, that Henry Cavill, he played Wolverine in a variant, a variant of him, and I thought that was hilarious. That was the first time I just burst out laughing in the theater. If for anything, for the inside baseball aspect of it all, because I am, I remember when it was announced that it wasn't announced, it was leaked that he was talking to Marvel after he was, let go from the DC universe. They're doing a different thing. And he was talking to Marvel. So a lot of people, everybody was throwing out characters. Oh, he can play Captain Britain, or he can play Cyclops in the X-Men. He can play this. Everybody was throwing out characters he could possibly play in the MCU, only for it to be a variant of the Wolverine in Deadpool and Wolverine. I thought that was genius. It was absolute genius. And at that moment, I said, this movie, there's nothing that can happen in this movie that will destroy it, that I will find upsetting to the point that I wouldn't like it. And it didn't happen. And so it was facts, because I loved it. I love that they did that. And they willing to go that far with it. How much further will they go? Well, they did go farther. We know, like I said, if you follow the entertainment news cycle, you knew years ago, when they were started filming this film, that Jennifer Garner has signed on to reprise her role as Elektra in this movie. I actually forgot about that, to be honest with you. And so I wasn't shocked when she showed up. I was just like, oh, that's right. And so it kind of caught me off guard a little bit, because I was expecting all of these cameos to come into play in this film. So I was like, wow, that's weird. How did I forget that? And then out of the blue, and God knows, when I say there was a cameo that I did not see and I thought I would never see, it was this one. Wesley Snipes returns as Blade. I mean, I literally clapped. I jumped up and clapped in the theater. And I was the only one. Everybody looking around like, what's his problem? But I was, I was like, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. Reason being, for the filming of Blade Trinity, which is the worst Blade movie, probably one of the worst comic book movies ever made. Ryan Reynolds also starred in that film as Hannibal King, alongside Wesley Snipes. There was a lot of speculation on them not getting along. They didn't like each other, didn't like working with each other. They'll never work with each other again. All of this, all of this, all of this. That leads me to what I saw online a few days ago where Wesley Snipes, he had started posting a lot of stuff about Blade on his social media. Because I follow him because I'm a fan. So I follow him. I'm like, man, he's putting a lot of Blade stuff online on his feed. Never read into it. I guess I'm an idiot. Never really read into it. Then he reposted a tweet about somebody saying how him and Ryan Reynolds didn't get along, and he retweeted it with another tweet where Ryan Reynolds said they got along fine. They were good friends and whatever the case may be. And he was like, yeah, media always try to make something out of nothing, whatever. I still never read into it. It went completely over my head. So when he popped up in here, I was like, oh my God, a single tear rolled down my cheek. I was amazed by it and so happy to see him back. And he finally looks old. He really looks old. Now in his little action scenes that he did in that fight that I was talking about, he still looks like Blade. He still has the moves. I mean, the dude is like a 500-degree black belt, so I still would mess with Wesley Snipes. But he does look old. But the line that he dropped was so meta. And he was like, I'm the one and only Blade, and there'll never be another Blade. I was like, wait, we're in a Marvel movie. We know Mahershala Ali is signed on to be Blade. Literally, supposedly, quote unquote, supposed to start filming this movie in the next couple of months, even though they don't have a director. But they're supposed to be starting to film this movie, but they just can't get it off the ground. And I'm looking at Wesley Snipes. Yeah, he looks a little old here, but you slap on a couple of layers of makeup there, I think he can still pull it off. I think he can still do it. But I still would love to see Mahershala Ali, but whatever the case may be. Never saw that coming. The one that I did see coming, but it was still a joy to actually see on the big screen, something that we were promised, 6-7 years ago, maybe even longer than that. Channing Tatum as Gambit in his comics accurate costume with that broken Cajun accent. It was just the most horrible accent. And this is somebody who's born and raised down here in old Cajun country. That was the worst Cajun accent. And and I'm telling my wife, like, oh, it was so good to see him. I wish they would have made a movie with him. And she was like, no, his dialect was bad. But I was like, no, I think they did that on purpose. I really think he did that on purpose for this movie because of the jokes that was landed with Deadpool's like, what are you saying? It was just funny how that went. I loved it. Loved that appearance. And the one that wasn't a shock, well, it was kind of a shock because I didn't watch the last trailers for this movie, which shocked me when I found out that this was in the trailer. X-23, Daphne King returning as X-23 from Logan. And this was weird that Marvel did that because Marvel doesn't leak nothing. They strategically release their trailers. They strategically release promotional material surrounding their films because they don't want any leaks. And so they purposely leaked X-23, and I don't know why. I would have loved to seen that surprise. I skipped over one cameo that was epic as well. We got the cameo of Chris Evans when Wolverine and Deadpool enter the void, and Chris Evans is there, and he's in this little robe, this cloak, and you don't know what outfit he's in. So you're assuming that this is a variant of Captain America. I immediately knew what this variant was. It was Johnny Storm from the 2005 Fantastic Four film. which Chris Evans played Johnny Stone. Uh, it was so hilarious to me. I'm like, man, they went full circle. They went all the way back and brought him in for this cameo, for this, for this film. Chef's kiss, Chef's kiss, man. That was brilliant. Other cameos we had returning in the role of Sabretooth from the very first X-Men film, Tyler Mane. You also have Ray Park joining him, also from the first film, as Toad. You also had Kelly Hu as Lady Deathstrike. Blake Lively, who is the real life wife of Ryan Reynolds. She was Lady Deadpool in this film. And a shocker to me, I found this out looking at the credits at the end of the movie. Matthew McConaughey as Cowboy Deadpool in that giant Deadpool battle that happened at the end of this film. He was Cowboy Deadpool. Blew my mind. It blew my mind. I was like, man, they really went all out for it. This was a Avengers level Deadpool movie, not an Avengers level movie. This was an Avengers level Deadpool movie, and a beautiful, beautiful tribute film to 20th Century Fox superhero films from the 2000s. It really was emotional at the end of this movie when they showed the behind the scenes of X-Men and X2. I thought that was beautiful. Also showed some behind the scenes, some clips from the Fantastic Four film with well, all of them actually, even that horrible one. Well, they all was horrible. That's not fair. The the most recent horrible one with Miles Teller and Michael B. Jordan. Just all of the Fox superhero films. And this was an homage to those films. And I thought it was beautiful. I really did get emotional. I don't know. I'm getting old. And the older I get, the more emotional I get. And I really did I didn't actually cry, but I was really saddened by it. I was like, man, that was an era. For better or worse, those films were worse, but those were part of your life. Those were part of my life. You know, I watched them. I went to the movies and literally sat in the theater for every single one of those films. And I'll never forget it. It'll always be a part of me. And I loved it. And Deadpool and Wolverine was a love letter to those films. And this was basically the Avengers Endgame version of all of the 20th Century Fox films. Beautifully done. The villain was cool. I adored the villain, Cassandra Nova. I thought that was a really, really nice touch to mix her in here and really keep her accurate to the comic books. I thought she was menacing and also had a arc in this film as well. My negatives are nitpicks. They are nitpicks, but there are things that stood out to me that bothered me. So I guess they're not nitpicks. I don't know. But it's not enough to detriment the film. You know, it didn't take me out of the film, these things, but it just stays in the back of my mind, like questioning. I'm pretty sure after a rewatch or talking it over with somebody else who've watched the film, they probably can shine some light on it and they'll go away. And so there's a strong possibility there as well. But my two nitpicks, starting with number one, is the Wade Wilson Vanessa breakup in this movie. The breakup bothered me. Now, I get it because I discussed this with my wife when we was driving home from the theater, and she was like, "Yeah, I get it. I I understand." And the way she explained it, I get it. That he's going through this kind of a midlife crisis and he's feeling like a failure and blah, blah, blah. And he's just down in the dumps and don't want her to see him like this or whatever the case may be. I say, yeah, I get all that. I can see that's why we would probably break up, but I don't see how that would, I don't see how they would break up from this. They'd have been through literally everything. Death. On multiple occasions, they've been through attempted hits, attempted assassinations, bloodbaths, fights, kidnappings, and all this other stuff. But this is what breaks you up. It was just it was weird that that's how they had this movie. That's how they started off this film. It just threw me off. It just threw me off because think back to the first Deadpool film. That was the film. That's what made that film so special. Their relationship. That love story was so powerful in that film. And, you knew that would stand the test of time. But for some strange reason, no. And the death of that character, of Vanessa in the second film, is what drove that movie. And so to start this movie and, well, we broke up. It just took me out. Now, like I said, the reasoning is sound for the layman, but not for them. It just didn't. It just bothered me. That's it all. And the other thing, my final nitpick, is the timeline in the beginning of the film. What timeline are we in? That's my only thing. What timeline? Because it starts off, you're in Earth 10005, right? And then he goes to Earth 616, which is the sacred timeline. That's the timeline with the MCU. And so he goes there. He has an interview with Happy Hogan, John Favreau reprising his role, and trying to join the Avengers, but he gets rejected and whatnot. And so that's Earth 616, the sacred timeline. And so after that meeting, when he's rejected, the very next scene, we flash a few months later, or years, I think. What was it, 6 years later? I think so, 6 years later, and we're back in Earth 1005. But the effects of Earth 616, what happened in that Earth, is affecting him on that Earth. You get what I'm saying? It didn't make sense logically to me. Now, it could have been explained in the movie and I missed it. That's why I said it's a nitpick, because it's a possibility I missed it, but I didn't see it. I didn't see it, and so I gotta ding it for that, because I'm like, what timeline are we on here? Is it the 616 or is it the 1005? I'm so confused, I'm getting more confused even saying it. But anywho, those are my two gripes with the movie. Besides that, this movie was great, exciting. Everybody who walked out was happy. You saw nothing but smiles. I even heard Marvel was back from somebody in the theater, and I couldn't agree more. Marvel Studios' Deadpool and Wolverine gets a letter grade of an A-. I love this movie. I cannot wait to watch it again. My wife was like, yeah, I want to see it again. It's one of those movies that you didn't want to end. You know what I'm saying? You ever watch the movie, whether you at home or in the theater? You ever sitting there watching a movie and it's so good, you're so into it. When it goes off, you're mad. You're not mad that the movie dropped the ball at the end or you didn't get the point. No, you're mad because you wanted more. This is that movie. You wanted more, and it gave you everything. It gave you so much, but it was so good. You wanted more. Absolutely enjoyed this movie. I mean, my God, I can't wait to go again. I would go tomorrow if I wouldn't have spent $80 to go see it. But it was money well spent. I am not mad at all. But I would like to know, do you think Marvel is back? Is this the film that has pretty much rejuvenated the MCU? Did you enjoy Deadpool and Wolverine? Were you a fan of the first two films? I would love to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube and like this video if you don't mind. Also, the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for the review of Deadpool and Wolverine. Can't wait to speak to you on the next go round. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.